The Fantasy 2025 Book Bingo Challenge is finally arrived. I have waited so bloody long for this challenge to come back around. I found out about this challenge in middle of last year, but my brain wouldn't allow me to start it because I felt like I'd already missed it and I just didn't feel like I was part of the community. I know it's weird. Sue me. It is what it is. I've waited until yesterday. This came out yesterday. If you don't know what the Fantasy Book Bingo is, on Reddit, they've got a subreddit, which is their fantasy section. So loads of people go on there and they just talk fantasy books all the time. It's absolutely amazing. It's just, I geek out so much on there and just read what people say. But every year in April, they do a bingo card where the people that make the page will put different categories for different boxes. And the aim is to try and read within each box, so you can tick them off and then get a line and get a full house, so that March next year you've read loads and loads of books that you wouldn't normally read, because some of the categories that they make are so unique. It forces you to read books that you wouldn't normally read. So I've had some fun with it this morning. I sat in my car, I saw that it had come out, and I literally cancelled all my plans because I thought, I'm going home, I'm doing it, and I'm making a video. So that's what these books are. Now, you know I normally don't turn books around because I hate it, but as part of this kind of game, I had to, because it's part of the fun in it. So I've just sat down for like the last hour and a half researching books to make sure they meet the criteria for each box. It'll all start to make sense eventually. I'm going to try and do overlays and stuff so you can see exactly what the categories are, yada, yada, yada. You know that my editing skills are absolutely crap, so look, we're just going to fake it until we make it. But I'm going to dive straight into it because I'm super excited and I just want to talk about books with you all. So here's the box. There's 25 categories and I've pretty much ticked every single one, which I didn't think I'd be able to. The plan for me at least was to use books that I've already got, and any books that I haven't got, I'm just going to use library, because look, books aren't cheap. I can't afford to keep going out buying new books all the time. But also a couple of the books that I have found that I don't own are on Kindle Unlimited. So your boy's going to use it because it feels free, because I've already paid for the subscription. So anyway, number one was Knights and Paladins. One of the protagonists is a paladin or knight. The hard mode is the character has an oath or promise to keep. I'm not doing the hard mode because it's already hard enough to try and get all these books. So I'm just going to do the regular. But if you want to play along and do this, by all means, crack on, do the hard mode. I think you'll be an absolute warrior. I'm just not that warrior. So for this one, Knights and Paladins, I chose Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. Now, the books I'm about to hold up to you, the idea behind this challenge is that you tick them all off through the year and you read them all. So every single book that I'm about to show you now, I will absolutely commit to reading in 2025 up until the end of March 2026. So I think it's wicked. It's just a really good way to encourage you to read books that maybe have been sat on your shelf for a while, and it just gets me hyped. So I picked this one because there's knights and stuff in it, isn't there? You know, they wear them, if you've read the Stormlight Archive before, they wear these like suits of armour that are powered by Stormlight, and if that doesn't say knight, then I don't know what does. So there's definitely knights in this, and plus Kaladin rhymes with paladin, so it just felt like fate. And yeah, Kaladin's one of the characters in this book. I read The Way of Kings, which is book one in this series last year. Absolutely loved it. The only thing that's put me off reading it so far is the sheer girth of these books. They're massive. This is like 1,200 and something pages. The writing's tiny and it's going to take me loads of time to get through. But I'm committing to it because that's part of the challenge, isn't it? So that was the first one. So we've ticked off the first box. Now the second one was Hidden Gem. This was bloody hard, I'll tell you now. It says a book under 1,000 ratings on Goodreads, new releases and arcs from popular authors do not count. So I was like, shit the bed. Like, what do you expect from me? I googled loads of books that have been on my TBR that I thought would be under 1,000 ratings. Near impossible. Could not find a book under 1,000 ratings. And then on my shelf, I was like, there was a book that has been on my shelf for a while and I've not read it yet. And it is called The Hero Virus by Russell Dumper. This was sent to me this year, actually, yeah. So this is an author who's wrote historical thrillers in the past, and he sent me this. This is his first attempt at a fantasy book, and it sounds wild on the back. It's in a world where this dude called Chris Taylor has basically lost his wife and is depressed, and then something happens to his dog, and he just gets really, really sad and really, really sick. But while he's sick, he catches a virus. This virus gives him superhuman powers, and it just makes me think of, like, have you seen the program The Boys, when they all get superhuman strength and stuff? So this dude's going to get superhuman strength, but everyone wants superhuman strength. So it's set in a world where they're trying to get rid of the virus, but how do you get rid of a virus when everyone that's got it is right hard, but the people that haven't got it want it because it gives them superhuman powers? This sounds wild, and this was the only book I had on my shelf that actually ticked the box. And it's also a book that I'm genuinely keen to read as well. So that's the first two done. Next up, we've got published in the 80s. Now this one was bloody hard as well, because I had a few books that were published in the early 90s, but I didn't know if I had any books that were published in the 80s. I looked at the first book in, go on, what's his name? Robert Jordan's series. You know what I'm on about, that sheer mammoth, humongous one. And that, frustratingly, was published January 1990. So I just missed out. But I did manage to find one, and it was, I've got a list on here as well with all my answers so I don't forget. So the one published in the 90s was The Black Company by Glenn Cook, or The Dragonbone Chair by Tad Williams. I don't own either of those books. So that was crazy to me. I've got this bookshelf here and another bookshelf over there, but I didn't have one single book published in the 80s. So I'm going to have to probably go to my library and get either The Black Company or The Dragonbone Chair, because I ain't got any. So if you've read any of them, drop it in comments and tell me which one you think I should read. Like I said, there's a few in here that I didn't own physical copies for, so I'm going to have to go out to the library and stuff. Next up, we had High Fashion, which I thought was a really interesting one. Now, the category to this, it said, read a book where clothing or fashion or fibre arts are important to the plot. This can be a crafty main character, such as Torn by Rowena Miller, or a setting where fashion itself is explored. I was just like, what on earth do you want me to do with this? So I did a bit of Google research, and it said The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie Ho is inspired by Korean mythology, featuring divine garments and ceremonial dresses as symbols of power and fate. Now, look, some of these might be a little bit cop-outy, but to me, I think that meets the criteria. So that's the book I went with, The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie Ho. I think that ticks the box. Next up, we've got Down with the System. So that is read a book in which a main plot resolves around disrupting a system. I thought this was pretty easy. This year, I read the first 3 books in the Red Rising trilogy. Loved them. It's wrapped up really nicely. This is a continuation of that series, but I think it's further on down the line. So it just made sense for me to put in Iron Gold by Pierce Brown to continue this series. Easy one, that. Number 6, Impossible Places. Read a book set in a location that would break a physicist. Is that the word? Physicist? Yeah, physicist. So anyway, the way I read that was, get a book where the world's minging, horrible, like proper horrible conditions, just an horrible place to live. And the most obvious choice for me was a series that's been on my radar for a while, and that was the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. I don't know anything about this series other than the fact that I know it's something to do with elemental magic. I think the world is just in absolute carnage. Like, stuff's happening with the weather. A lot of bad stuff's happening with the weather, and it's an horrible place to be, and it just felt like the right choice. And if I'm totally honest, I didn't have any other books that kind of tick the criteria, so I'll be reading that in 2025 as well. Buzzing. What we got next? A book in parts. Read a book that's separated into large sections within the main text. This can include things like acts, parts, days, or years. Now, I nearly gave up on this one until I went onto Google, and Google told me that Dune, yeah, the book that I've been absolutely petrified to read for yonks, is separated into parts. It says it's separated into 3 parts. Paul's life before the desert, whoever Paul is. I thought there's a film called Paul where there's like an alien with a big head or something, but apparently there's a fella called Paul in here and all. So Paul's life before the desert, his rise, and then the final confrontation with the Emperor. So I'm going with this. It's got parts in it. It's going on the bingo ticket. Next up, we've got Gods and Pantheons. Read a book featuring divine beings. What did I pick for that one? Gods and Pantheons. I picked Malazan, Book of the Fallen. Book 1 is Gardens of the Moon. Macaulay, tell me I got your name right. Macaulay watches these videos and he's been egging me on for so long to do a buddy read for this series, and I'm going to need to do a buddy read for it because I know it's going to confuse the shit out of me. And we're going to be reading it as part of this bingo challenge, and the reason I picked this one is because online it said Steven Erikson features an intricate pantheon where gods walk among mortals, interfere in wars, and sometimes ascend from humanity. So if that doesn't tick the box, I don't know what bloody does. Next up, we've got Book Club Legend Board. So this was quite an hard challenge because as part of this challenge they said that you had to pick a book that had featured in their book club. Them being the fantasy subreddit on Goodreads, they've got books that they recommend and stuff, and they've got their own book club. So I was scrolling for ages and ages and ages to try and find a book that they had on their list that I had on my shelves. The first one I came across was Legends and Lattes, but I'd already read that. As part of this challenge, I'm trying to do books I've not already read. And then I got like 7 pages in and I saw a book and I was like, shit, I've got that. And it was this one. Where is it? Oh, I've lost it. This is no good for video, is it? It were Legendborn. Here it is by, what's her name? Tracy Dion. I picked this up from Vinted a while back for £1. I've heard loads of good things about it. I really don't know what it's about, but everyone that speaks about it says it's class. So I literally bought it for that reason. And it's almost like the fate gods knew that this challenge was going to ask me to read something from Fantasy's Goodreads read list because they've read it. And I can put it on my bingo card, which is just great. What we got next? We've got the last in a series. Oh no, bloody hell, this is not good for video. This is where editing comes in. I'm not going to edit it though. Last in the series was actually before book club, and I picked Fury of the Gods by John Gwynne because I've read book 1 and 2. It's fantastic. It's Norse inspired. Gods used to once walk on the earth. They had a massive battle. They all got sent to God Jesus. I don't know how that works, but yeah, anyway, they all went somewhere, and then there were people that still walked the earth that were like demigods, like Hercules, but not. So they had powers, but they weren't actually gods. They were like, they had god blood in them. And then it all kicks off. Some people may or may not want to bring the gods back. Gods may or may not come back and walk on the earth. Anyway, it's class. This is book 3. And this is the last one that I need to read. So I'll be reading this as part of the bingo challenge in 2025 or 2026 because I've got to the end of March 2026. The next one we've got Parenthood Protagonist. This was another difficult one. So as part of this, you needed to find a book where the main protagonist was a parent. Doesn't necessarily have to be blood child. It can be a foster child or something like that. And how the bloody hell are you supposed to know that unless you've read the book? So I'm picking all these books up, reading up blurbs, and I'm like, oh, shut the front door. Until I picked up The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. And just bear in mind, before I picked this book up, I'd picked other books up and Googled, are there any children and parents in these books? And no. And then I Googled this one and it said, yeah. It said, yeah, there's parents in it. So where is it? Where's my proof to you? The Night Circus, Celia is trained by her father who forces her into a magical rivalry with Marco. She grows up as part of the magical competition. There's parents and shit. Kids and parents. So that were going in, weren't it? Yeah, it were. There's books everywhere. My wife's going to go mad when she gets home from work. This bedroom's a shithole. Oh, the next one was a word that I couldn't pronounce. Epistolary. I didn't know what it were. I didn't even understand the description. But then it turns out that it basically meant that they want a book that includes journal entries as like a key part of the storyline. And I already knew straight away that I had this book, Gallant by V.E. Schwab, on my shelf, and I knew that the story followed a girl whose mum had been sent to Jesus, but the mum had left a journal that had like loads of mysteries in it, and I don't know if there's some sort of portal to a parallel world. Don't know. I've actually never read V.E. Schwab other than The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and that bored me a little bit, I'll be honest. I've said this before, I don't understand how someone can be on Earth for so long and be so boring. So I was put off reading V.E. Schwab for a while, but I'm going to pick this back up. I believe it might be more YA fantasy. I don't know. It's a fit book. The actual concept of the book sounds really interesting, and there's journal entries. So again, it ticked a bingo box. What have we got next? So we have got a book published in 2025. That were a piece of piss because I've got The Devils sat on my shelf by Joe Abercrombie. I told you in my last video that I'm going to be reading this at some point soon. So that just felt... I know it's cheating a little bit because I already knew I was going to read that. But look, there aren't many books published in 2025 that I've got on my shelf because they're expensive new books. I tend to get most of my books from charity shops and stuff, and brand new books aren't typically there. So that's going on the list. Author of Colour is the next box. That was another easy one, Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. This has been on my radar for a long time. I'm told this is really fast-paced, relatively short chapters as far as fantasy books go, and just a man on a mad mission or a woman on a mad mission. I don't know if the main character is a man or a woman. I'm just stereotyping here, really, because most male authors tend to write main male characters. Other than John Gwynne, he writes some cracking female characters. But anyway, whether this character is a man or a woman, they go on a mad mission, and I'm guessing there's probably some dragons in it. That's a dragon noise, by the way. I ain't done that for a while, have I? What's up next? Small press or self-published. I thought this one was going to be really hard, but then it turns out The Grace of Kings is published by, what are they called? Head of Zeus. And the Head of Zeus are a small press publisher based in the UK, and I wouldn't have expected that. I genuinely expected The Grace of Kings to be published by one of the big five, and it didn't. So that were an easy one to put on my list because that's another book that I want to read this year. I don't know what it's about. A lot of people have told me it's kind of like history wrapped into fantasy, telling a story of stuff that's happened wherever it's set. I don't know, but the cover's beautiful, and there's like a flying thing on it as well. I don't know if that's a dragon. I don't think it is. It looks like a mermaid with wings. Can't imagine it's going to be that, but there's ships and stuff on it. Cover's just beautiful. Oh, it's just one of them books that has been on my shelf for a while, and I want to read it just because it just screams, read me, read me. What we got next? Biopunk. So this, what was the description of the Biopunk one? It was a weird description for me. Didn't quite understand it initially, and then I dug a little bit deeper and I was like, right, okay, I think I get you. So the Biopunk was read a book that focuses on biotechnology and or its consequences. Aha, I remember that one now. So this was another book that I didn't have because none of the books that I do have fit the criteria. So I did a bit of Googling, a bit of research, and it says that Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler is set in a dystopian future. This novel explores a world transformed by biotechnology, genetically modified organisms, and social collapse. The protagonist navigates a chaotic society where biotechnology and genetic engineering have altered both the environmental and humanity, focusing on survival and the development of a new belief system. So yeah, that again ticked all the boxes. I follow a few creators online who have read Parable of the Sower and said it's one of the best things they've ever read. So that's another book that I'm going to be forced to read in 2025. And this is the beauty of this challenge. I think it forces you to read books that maybe aren't even on your radar, but are forced to be on your radar. Next up, we had Elves and Dwarves. This was where I got to actually save some pennies because another book series that's been on my radar for a while. I don't have the physical books. I do like to own physical books because I like smelling paper. I'm a bit of a weirdo like that. But the paperbacks are like £13 on Amazon, and I've got 3 kids. Look, I can't afford to keep buying new books all the time. But this series has been on my radar for a while, and it's on Kindle Unlimited. If you've not heard of it, it is called Bound and the Broken by Ryan Cahill. He is an Irish author, which I love because it's close to my neck of woods-ish, innit? We're not too far. A stone's throw away, one would say. And it's got elves and dwarves in it. I don't know anything more than that, other than the fact that it's doing quite well. Reviews on it look really good on Goodreads. So Elves and Dwarves, Ryan Cahill, Bound of the Broken series. I think all the books are on Kindle Unlimited as well. The next one was LGBTQIA Protagonist, which just meant that I needed to pick a book that represented, as part of that community, the main character. And I was like, I've got a fair few, I think. And V. Schwab just, again, shouted out to me because I know V. Schwab is fantastic when it comes to representation. So another series that I've been keen to get into because Dylan, a lad that I follow on Instagram, raves constantly about V. Schwab in this series, and it's called The Shades of Magic Trilogy. And I think the main character, I want to say his name's Kel, he's gay. That's all it said on internet. It said Kel. So when I Googled it, I mean, I already knew that she was brilliant with representation and that there was going to be someone maybe gay in it or trans or non-binary. Like, I knew that I was going to get that from her books, but I didn't know what. And then when I went on Google, I literally went on Google and typed in, is there anyone gay in the Shades of Magic trilogy? And it come back and it said, yeah, Kel says at the start of the book that he's interested in men. And I was like, yes, gay man, tick, bingo, go on. So, yeah, speaking of gay, I don't know if you've followed me for long enough, but I did recommend on one of my previous videos, For the Fans by Nyla Kay. It's not fantasy, it's a male-male romance book. It's like a stepbrother romance where the parents won't pay for the college fees, so they end up having to do For the Fans, only fans, to pay for college, and then they end up like bumming and stuff. Really, really good. Fantastic book. Highly recommend it. Obviously, if you're homophobic, you're not going to want to read that. But I always say this time and time again, even if you are homophobic, if you read a book about gay men, you can't catch gay. Honestly, it's not like an illness or anything. It's not contagious. You will still probably be a straight man after you've read it. And if after you've read it, it starts to make you feel all twitchy in your box shorts and stuff, you might have just always been bisexual. Next up, we have got 5 SFF short stories. This is where I'm going to need your help. I don't really read short stories. So again, I went onto Google and typed, can you give me any recommendations? And one that came up was The Dark Tower, The Little Sisters of Eularia, which is the Stephen King Dark Tower series. That's a fantasy series that's been on my radar for a while. I've not read it. I don't know if I need to read the short stories or if they're just there for you to read if you want to read them. But again, I really struggled with that one, so I'm going to need your help because I ain't got any short stories. I don't really read short stories. So if you know any fantasy or sci-fi short stories, I need to read 5 of them. Drop them in comments and I'll read them. I'm sorry I failed on that one. I gave up. I spent an hour and a half already trying to get these books sorted. Next up, we've got Stranger in Stranger Land. I don't know if that was the description, if that's just what I've typed. No, it is Stranger in Strange Land, which is read a book that deals with being a foreigner in a new culture. The character or characters, if there are a group, must be either visiting or moving in as a minority. So what did I pick for that one? I picked The Name of the Wind. I haven't read it yet, but again, I went onto Google and it said, I don't know how you pronounce this name, Kvothe, or is it Vothe, or is it Kothe? I don't know, but anyway, this main character begins as a foreigner in a university, coming from a nomadic background with different customs and values. As he learns about magic and grows, he must navigate the social norms and expectations of a new culture, all while struggling to belong. And I thought that sounded fantastic. Name of the Wind is another book that has been on my radar for a while, but I know it's not complete, and Patrick Rothfuss, the author, probably never going to complete it. I don't know if book 1's wrapped up quite nicely and I can get away with not reading book 2. Tell me, again in comments, but I'm going to have to read it. I believe that the writing and his prose are quite flowery and poetic, which I usually struggle with. I like kind of direct, simple writing. And I know that Rothfuss apparently does beautiful writing, but I'm just going to have to get over it and get used to the fact that I need to further my literary palette, shall we say. So that was the one for the Stranger Land. Now recycle a square from a previous year. I went back to the previous year, 2024's book bingo, and one of the squares was to pick a book published in the 1990s, which, as I said earlier on in the video, The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan was published January 1990, and it's been sat on my shelf for a while. I love these. I want to say these are like American mass market, you know, like the smaller books. Really like them, I don't know why. So this will be getting read. Book 1 in the, what's the actual series called? Wheel of Time! That's it. I knew it had a name. Excited to read that, because I don't read many fantasy books that are like farm boy who takes on the world. And I believe it's that kind of story where it's an underdog doing badass shit. That sounds cool. What we got next? Cozy fantasy or sci-fi with a relatable or happy ending. I went for Bookshops and Bone Dust because I read Legends and Lattes in 2024 and I bloody loved that book by Travis Baldree. And this is a prequel, I believe, but it came out after. So you don't have to read this first. You can read either or. and I'm guessing it's just going to give me that same kind of feeling. It says high fantasy, first loves, second-hand books. As if that doesn't scream good time. Good time, Gale. I don't know who Gale is, but it was a G. So, next up we have got... Are we at the end? We're not at the end yet. We're nearly at the end. Bear with me. If you've watched till this point, thank you. Generic title. So the generic title one was any book that includes one of the following names. Where are we? Blood, bone, broken, court, dark, shadow, song, sword or throne. And I were like, piece of piss, Game of Thrones. I know I said throne, but it does say in the description you can choose plural. I'm choosing plural. I have never watched the series. I have never read the books. The reason I have been put off reading these for so long is because someone told me that they've got about 4,417 characters in each book, and your boy's got a shit memory. So usually when there's too many characters, I get overwhelmed. But look, this is part of the challenge. We're doing crazy shit. Like, I just feel like this challenge is going to make me step outside my comfort zone and read some of the books that I've been scared to read. And this is one of them. I'm going to read them and I'm going to love them because I'm going in with that mindset. What is the last one on here? Oh, we're not on the last one yet. The second to last one is not a book. Do something new besides reading a book. Watch a TV show, play a game, learn how to summon a demon. I want to get over it. I know that's not learning how to summon a demon, but it's a magic spell and shit. Okay, maybe not that last one. Okay, I didn't read that bit before I cast the spell on you. I'm sorry. If you are dead, then I don't know how to bring you back to life. Movies, video games. Anyway, I thought that was really cool because it's not just trying to ram books down your throat. It's like saying, look, books are cool, but sometimes you just need to take a breather, do something different. And I'm an advocate for that. A lot of the time people message me and say, how do I get out of reading slump? And I'm like, just don't put pressure on yourself. If you're not enjoying reading at the minute, don't read. Do something else. Watch a program. Watch films. Spend time with your kids. And then when you miss books, because naturally you will, you'll find that you enjoy them again. So, Dungeons and Dragons. That's what I want to do in 2025. I'm desperate to get involved in it. I'm not very good at role-playing and imagination and stuff. And my brother-in-law plays Dungeons and Dragons. So I've said to him, look, dude, I want to make a character. I want to get involved. I want to be like, I don't know, a wizard who travels in a trolley. Some crazy shit like that. So in 2025, I'm going to start playing Dungeons and Dragons. But I want to do it in person. So I need to find some like-minded geeks, because that's what I am. I'm just a geeky dude that sits in his bedroom and reads books. So yeah, buzzing for Dungeons and Dragons in 2025. Last but not least, pirates. Why are pirates called pirates? Because they are. I'm a dad, and that's a dad joke. Read a book where pirates engage in piracy. Yeah, because that's what pirates usually do, isn't it? The Live Ship Traders by Robin Hobb is upside down. So I'm actually starting, after my current read, The Assassin's Apprentice, is that what it's called? Anyway, book 1 in the Farseer trilogy. So I'm going to smash them 3 out, and then after that I'm reading these 3. That is my book bingo, complete, done, all 25. I think there's one recommendation I need from you lot, which are the short stories. If you want to join along, all you need to do is go onto Reddit, type in Reddit on your phone, you can download the app, go up to the top, type fantasy, book bingo, and the card will be there. You can join along, you don't have to pick the same books as me. It's just fun. I really enjoyed reading through them all and thinking, I wonder if I've got books that relate to them. And if not, do some research and find other books. Oh, I'm interested in books that maybe have got some sort of, clothes, linked to clothing and fashion. Because it's not something I'd ever think, like, oh, I'm going to pick up a book about fashion. Or I'm going to pick up a book where the main protagonist is a parent. But this forces you to do it, and I think it's cool as shit. If you've not already subscribed, do it. I'm going to clean all this mess up now because my wife's going to go batshit crazy. Then I'm going out because the sun's out. I'm going to play Pokemon Go. I'm going to read some books, and I'm going to see you in the next one. Subscribe, please.